So, the song, 12 Days of Christmas. Almost all countries and cultures through history have had some kind of midwinter festival. Northern Europe had Yule, the Romans had Saturnalia. So we've had there are a lot of instances where people want to cheer themselves up during winter. Early Christians didn't approve of this indulgence, and Christmas as a festival was not recognised until the 4th century. The carol, if you want to call it a carol or a song, the 12 Days of Christmas, is a cumulative song about 12 days that follow Christmas Day, not the days leading up to it, as some people think. The 12 days in the song are the 12 days starting with Christmas Day, or in some traditions, Boxing Day, to the day before Epiphany, or the Feast of Epiphany, the 6th of January, or the first day. Twelfth night is defined by the Oxford English Dictionary as the evening of the 5th of January, preceding 12th day, eve of the Epiphany, formerly the last day of the Christmas festivities and observed at the time of merrymaking. The 12 days of Christmas is the period that in Christian theology marks the span between the birth of Christ and the coming of the Magi, the three wise men. This year we do actually have three. Normally we have 7.
The others have retired.
It begins on Christmas Day around January 6th, and these 12 days were the only holiday you might get in medieval England. But by the Georgian period, even Christmas Day was a normal working day for many people. The earliest known version of the song first appeared in a 1780 English children's book called Mirth Without Mischief, which sounds depressing to me. The first edition of the book sold for $23,750 at Sotheby's in 2014. You can buy a cheap digital copy on Amazon. Some historians think that the song could be French in origin, but most do agree that it was designed as a counting or memory and forfeit guess in the early 1700s or 1800s. There's one of those songs where when it's your turn, you repeat all the previously sung lyrics, you add the next one. If it's wrong, you have to do a forfeit. There are many different versions, different lyrics, such as one in which the singer's mother is particular instead of their true love. But the version that we're familiar with today was written in 1909 by British composer Frederick Hoff. Here we go. First one, I'm going to go through each verse and we'll explore a little bit of history about the whole song as we go along. So on the first day of Christmas, my true love sent to me a partridge in a pear tree. Partridge has been an expensive delicacy in the UK for many, many years. An antiquarian writing in 1867 speculated that pear tree might be a corruption of the French perdrix, which means partridge. Cecil Sharp, the avid collector of folk tunes, wrote in 1916 that from the constancy in English, French and long drop versions of the Merry Little Partridge, I suspect that pear tree is really perdrix or Old French peaches carried into England, and juniper tree in some English versions may have been jolly head, pretty partridge. I don't think this works though, because that surely would translate as partridge in a partridge. If it's a partridge in a pear tree, a partridge in a partridge. So I'm fairly sure that that's not right. But never mind, that is a theory. In other old versions of the song, the partridge know and love is replaced with a very pretty peacock upon a pear tree. And if you think that's a little bit more weird, consider a Scottish version that gives an Arabian baboon. Another version has no words, through the juniper tree. So that's 2. This is on December the 26th. On the second day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 2 turtle doves and a partridge in a pear tree. Turtle doves are a symbol of constancy and fidelity. They are native to continental Europe and the Middle East, and they only visit Britain in the summer. The song probably means 2 caged birds, because it might not necessarily mean turtle doves. So looking again at the whole song, not just the first 2, in the northern counties, so relevant to us, the song is often called the 10 Days of Christmas, as there are only 10 gifts. There's a similar cumulative version of Scotland called the Yule Days, and it has 13 days rather than 12. And the number of gifts does not increase the manner of the 12 days of Christmas. Its final verse, first published in Chambers' Popular Rhymes in 1842, runs as follows. The king sent his lady on the 13th Yule day, 3 stalks and merry corn, 3 maids and merry dancing, 3 hinds and merry hunting, an Arabian baboon, 3 swans and merry swimming, 3 ducks and merry laying, a bull that was brown, 3 gold finks, 3 starlings, a goose that was grey, 3 plovers, 3 partridges, a pippin go I, who learns my carol and carries it away. Pippin go I, or a papping go I in their tradition, was peacock or parrot. If anyone knows other words, please do correct me. So suggestions have also been made that the gifts have significance, such as representing food or sport each month of the year. And importance certainly has long been attached to 12 days, when, for instance, the weather on each day was carefully observed to see what it would be in the corresponding month of the coming year. I don't think that has any relevance to the song that we're familiar with, but some versions of the song do seem to have a natural connection. Number 3, December the 27th. On the 3rd day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 3 French hens. Chickens would also have been expensive and for special occasions in the past. Cecil Sharp, the folk tune collector, also suggests that the adjective French in 3 French hens might simply mean foreign. Or the word hen might also mean stone bottles for wine or beer. French hens might just mean bottles for wine or beer, which would fit with the sense of merrymaking and having food. The Northern Festival of Yule would be celebrated here. The prime feature you would look for in an Anglo-Saxon England when choosing a wife was a skill in brewing, one of the skills. There is a theory that there is a hidden Catholic meaning behind each verse. This theory has been heavily discredited, but it's interesting anyway. The Catholics in England during the period 1558 to 1829 were prohibited from any practice of their faith by law. So it was a crime to be Catholic. So there is a theory that the songs, the gifts in the song are a hidden meaning to teach the Catholic faith to children. So the true love in the song is not an earthly tutor, but rather God himself. And me refers to every baptized person. So the partridge in a pear tree, for example, is Jesus Christ. And Christ is symbolically presented in song as a mother partridge. For example, partridges do actually feign injuries to quote predators awaiting helpless nesting. And there's a suggestion that this mirrors Christ's sadness over the fate of Jerusalem, but in the Bible it says, Jerusalem, how often would I have sheltered thee under my wings, as a hen does her sheep. So the theory goes that the other symbols are the turtle doves are the Old and New Testament, French hens are faith, hope, and charity. The 4 calling birds are 4 Gospels, or the 4 evangelists. The 5 golden rings are the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The 6 feet of laying are the 6 days of creation. The 7 swans of swimming are the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. The 8 maids of milking are the 8 beatitudes. The 9 ladies dancing are the 9 fruits of the Holy Spirit. 10 lords are leading the 10 commandments. And the 11 pipers, the 11 faithful apostles, and the 12 drummers, the 12 points of doctrine in the Apostles' Creed. However, many historians do not agree with this, probably not. So that's 4, December the 28th. On the 4th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 4 calling birds or collie birds. It should be collie birds. The collie is an old word meaning coal or coal black, so this is probably black. This is a bird that's around all year. So when other forms of meat are scarce, might be blackbird. If you think of the singer song of Sixpence, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie, they were a good source of meat. And the King Cole of the song was probably a 3rd century prince, Colchester being a former Roman town, and the oldest recorded town in England. My family used to live nearby. The collie may be a corruption of the French word collet, meaning rough. So it might actually be a rough pigeon, a bird with a ruff. If it's calling birds, it might refer to songbirds. And in some versions in the mid-1800s, called canary birds or coloured birds. But the accepted version actually is collie birds. You may have noticed that there's a bird theme running through the verses. No one's quite sure why that is. It might again be to do with. So, verse 5, December 29th. On the 5th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 5 gold rings. The ring is a symbol of eternity, commitment, fidelity, supreme value, and wisdom. I love this story. In the Middle Ages, Pope Innocent III sent 4 gold rings to King John, representing the 4 virtues that a monarch should have: justice, fortitude, prudence, and temperance. And he sent them because he thought that King John was a bad king and lacked all of these virtues and needed reminding. So the song that most of us are familiar with, as I said, is 1909 by Frederick Austin. And he rearranged a traditional English folk melody and set the lyrics, and he was the one who added the little 5 gold rings, which is breaks up the melody. A gentleman called William S. Baring of Gould suggests that all the presents sent on the first 7 days, birds, if you include the 5 gold rings, perhaps it is another bird. It might refer to 5 gold rings to ring pheasant instead of actual jewelry. This would again align with the idea that birds might be 5 gold sphinx, which is an old word for goldfinch, or it might be canary. However, in the 1780 publication, the expensive children's book, the illustration clearly depicts 5 gold rings. Actually, December 30th. On the 6th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 16th lane. So depending on the theory, this is either the 4th, 5th, or 6th. Goose eggs actually make great cakes. I've never tried this, but I have done it with duck eggs and fantastic. So I imagine if you do it with goose eggs, you're rich. But these geese in the song may not have been intended as food themselves, because they eat the laying. Maybe have it intended for eggs. The ancestor of our modern geese is the grey lag goose, and it's considered a symbol of devotion, intelligence, and fidelity, as well as security. Geese make great guards. And in one Victorian version, this verse is stuck for them. So, with this, okay, carrying on with the song. Verse 7, December 31st, New Year's Eve. On the 7th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 7 swans of spring. The swan was highly respected in the Middle Ages. It was also the symbol of the Greek god Apollo, god of art and prophecy, and a symbol of poetry. The Celts believed swans were the guardians of departed souls, and the Norse believed that the 3 fates could turn themselves into swans. Queen Victoria loved swans, she loved to eat, and she had swans served stuffed with steak and onion, with port and red currant jelly. James Woodford, an 18th century English country parson, in his diary, on the date January 28, 1780, gave a lovely description of a dinner that he went to. We had for dinner a calf's head, boiled fowl and tongue, a saddle of mutton roasted on the side table, and a fine swan roasted with currant jelly sauce for the first course. The second course, a couple of wild fowl called dumb fowl, lark, blancmange, tart, etc., etc., and a good dessert of fruit, after amongst which was a damson cheese. I never ate a bit of swan before, and I think it good eating with sweet sauce. The swan was killed 3 weeks before it was eaten, and yet not the least bad thing. I do love a description of a course that has etc. etc. Many years ago, gifts were given on this, not on Christmas. Many poor depended on gifts of food from their lord or employer, like farm princes. A gift given to the Lord symbolised obligation and devotion. By prerogative right, the British Crown enjoyed ownership of all unmarked newspapers and water. Right for bonds may, however, be granted to by the Crown, and the ownership of bonds in certain bodies of water was commonly granted to landowners up to the century. The only bodies still to exercise such rights are two livery companies of the City of London. Thus, the ownership of bonds in the Thames is shared equally among the Crown, the Vintners Company, and the Dyers Company. I don't know whether this means if you're part of the Vintners Company or the Dyers Company, can legally go out and do one needed. Sure. Verse 8, January the 1st, New Year's Day. On the 8th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 8 maids from Milford. Field labourers used to get Christmas Day off as a holiday, but often that would be the only day all year, and for many later on, even Christmas Day was a working day. But even if you did get Christmas Day off, if you worked on a farm, your farm animals still needed caring for, but realistically, it wasn't as labour. At Christmas, a medieval feudal lord would show off his wealth by hosting feasts for nobility and also by giving gifts of food to support his labourers. At this point, dairy products would be hugely important. In 1507, the Duke of Buckingham hosted 182 people for Christmas dinner on Christmas Day, and a further 319 people 2 days later. In the same Victorian version that you mentioned earlier with ducks in place of geese, this verse is hares are running, and another has hounds are running, and the Cecil Sharp version has boys are singing. Going back to versions that have dairy products, some old recipes that used them that were important for celebrations were things like soufflés, custards, baked eggs, syllabub, which is cream with lemon juice, sugar and alcohol, and something called white pot. It's a sweet, buttery, bready, custard-type pudding originating in 18th century Devon. The term white pot simply means white pudding, and recipes for white pot changed very little over the years and between regions. They primarily consist of bread, sometimes also rice, with sugar, eggs, cream, some spice, milk, and a bit of fruit. I have a recipe here, although I have no idea what you do with these ingredients. You bake them.
I am guessing bread and butter pudding.
Yes, it is actually that. When you look at it, essentially that. You have a pint of cream, a cinnamon stick, salt, mace, fresh nutmeg, eggs, sugar, a loaf of bread, half a cup of butter, plenty of raisins and dates, and then more fresh cream to pour over the top of it. You can see a lot of these are meant to be indulgent, but they are full of calories, so they would be things that would fill you up and keep you going throughout half winter months. Verses 9 and 10. January the 2nd, on the 9th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 9 ladies dancing, and on the 3rd, my true love sent to me 10 lords weeping. Some past versions here had fools a roaring, lambs a bleating, and bears a beating in place of ladies. Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honour of the god Saturn, and it was held on the 17th of December in the Julian calendar, and later was expanded to have festivities that ran through the 23rd. This holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice at the Temple of Saturn and a public banquet, followed by private gift-giving, continual partying, and a carnival atmosphere. The important point about this festival was that it overturned Roman social norms. The gambling was permitted, and masters would provide table service for their slaves, and the slaves would be the masters. It was seen as a time of liberty for both slaves and freedmen alike. A common custom was the election of a king of the Saturnalia who would give orders to people, which were to be followed, and they were to preside over the merrymaking. Gifts exchanged were usually gag gifts or small figurines made of wax or pottery known as sigillaria. The poet Catullus called it the Vessus. It was a festival that was the Roman equivalent to the earlier Greek holiday of Pronia, celebrated in late and mid-summer, and it held some theological importance for Romans who saw it as a restoration of an ancient golden when the world was ruled by fact. Saturnalia may well have influenced some of the customs associated with later celebrations in Western Europe, which occur in midwinter, particularly traditions associated with Christmas, the Feast of the Holy Innocents, and Epiphany. In particular, the historical Western European Christmas custom of electing a lord of misrule almost certainly has its origins in Saturnalia. So this may well be where lords are leading and ladies are from. It may be representing servants and labourers having swapped roles. If lords are leaving, perhaps the lords being like their servants. But it may simply be a representation of the merrymaking that goes on with it. Cross-dressing is another thing that may have its roots in this festival, which is maintained in pantomime festival because you would often cross-dress as part of the Other variations here that you would have in place of 10 lords of eating were ships of sailing, men a mowing, cocks a crowing, and asses raising. January the 4th, verse 11. On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 11 pipers piping. We might think of bagpipe players, and originally bagpipes were designed to be played on top of fortresses to frighten the enemy. However, original listeners to this song were just called flute. Pipe would have meant a flute, and it's one of the simplest instruments to make. But you can produce some very sophisticated music with a flute, and it makes a great accompaniment to dancing, which is probably why it's mentioned here. Other variations in the song here are ladies spinning, badgers baiting, and bulls beating. The 12th, January the 5th, final verse. On the 12th day of Christmas, my true love sent to me 12 drummers drumming. Again, this might just be another accompaniment to dancing, but it may refer to the practice of wassailing. Wassail is derived from an Anglo-Saxon word meaning good health. And the tradition falls into two distinct categories. You have the house visiting wassail and the orchard visiting wassail. The house visiting wassail is the practice of people going door to door, much like trick-or-treating, singing and offering a drink from the wassail bowl in exchange for gifts. And this practice does still exist in some areas of the country, but it's largely been displaced by caroling. Sometimes you would get people who would go, much like trick-or-treating, it would be, give us something or we will vandalise your house. It would be trick-or-treat in a very similar fashion. The orchard wassail, the other kind, refers to the ancient custom of visiting orchards in cider-producing regions of England, reciting incantations and singing to the tree to promote a good harvest for the coming year. Traditionally, the wassail is celebrated on night. And in the Middle Ages, it was a reciprocal exchange between the feudal lords and their peasants as a form of recipient-initiated charitable giving, which was distinguished from begging. And this point is made in a song entitled Cui Cant o Wassailu, you may be familiar with it. When the wassailers inform the lord of the house, we are not daily beggars taking Lord's door, but we are friendly neighbours whom you have seen before. And the lord of the manor would give them food and drink in exchange for their blessing and goodwill, and he would reply, love and joy come to you, and to you your wassail through. God bless you and send you a happy new year. Wassailing is the background practice against which English carols such as We Wish You a Merry Christmas can be made central. So this is what I was talking about with similarities with trick-or-treating. So if you think about the end of that carol, so give us some figgy pudding, it's one of the things that would be demanded, give us some figgy pudding or we won't go away. So yes, although wassailing is often described now in the opera, sometimes nostalgic terms, the practice hasn't always been that innocent, and it could often be associated with rowdy bands of young men, drunk young men, entering the homes of wealthy neighbours demanding food, children, or vandalism. So in cider-producing west of England, wassailing also refers to singing the health of the king. And you wouldn't just sing to them, you would make an awful lot of noise. So the drumming may refer to drumming, and you would bang pots and pans and drums to frighten away the evil spirits to encourage good health in the tree. So we have another old rhyme that comes from the Channel Islands, and it goes like this: "Wassail the trees, that they may bear you many a plum and many a pear. For more or less fruit they will bring, you do give them wassail." So the point of it is to awaken your forest tree, scare away the evil. You would often have a wassail king and queen who would lead the song in the procession, and you would often have food such as toast soaked in the wassail cup that you would place inside the tree that you wanted. You're encouraging the people. We have other variations here, which include bell bells ringing and fiddlers singing. Again, this may just be merrymaking, or the bells might again refer to wassailing, making a huge noise away from the ship. So that is the song, 12 Days of Christmas, with a bit of associated history. I hope it was enlightening. So moving on, this festive season, Lidl has launched something they call Little Bear's Toy Bank. I don't know if you've seen the Little Bear.
Yeah.
It's weird, it looks really bad. So Lidl have a toy bank this year, and hopefully long may it continue. So they're inviting people to bring new or unopened toys and games to donate to. You can donate them in Lidl store, and they will be shared out to local charities. They work with a network of neighbourly charities. Neighbourly is the network. To partner with local charities that bring lots of new African games. To share them out to children who need them, children who are vulnerable or deprived, and it's a really beautiful cause. So this year we've invited everyone, if you would like to bring some toys up, brought any with you. We can decorate under the tree with them. You're very welcome to bring them up now. Do not have something that you will feel like to participate. On the back table you'll find there are some toys there. Feel free to bring a couple up, come under the tree with everyone else's. This will not be the final week we do it. So if you haven't brought anything, have something at home, bring them another day and we will take you to them later on in the month. If you do not want to donate toys and you would rather make a financial donation, we're inviting you to donate to Bernardo, another national children's charity for children in care and vulnerable situations. So I'm invited now, if you'd like to bring your toys to decorate the tree. Thank you, everyone. They really do go to a great cause. Thank you for your contribution together.
Today, obviously, last week was lit, and that was the candle of peace. This is the candle of peace. In the Christian tradition, Advent is the beginning of the church year. It's recognizing the transforming power of God in the world and looking towards the birth of Jesus and the celebration of spiritual. And Christianity is not alone in celebrating light at this time of year. Hanukkah, solstice Yule, and Kwanzaa also involve candles, fire, and light as part of the celebration. So each week until Christmas, a new candle is lit on the Advent wreath. The circle of greenery reminds us of the eternal cycle of all life, birth and death. And the candles remind us that we are each called to emit our glow amid the pain and suffering facing our world. The light of Advent goes brighter and brighter, guiding us towards personal peace, shared joy, and more love. At this time, we may also remember the words of Jesus from the book of John. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives, but do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. So at this time, let this candle be a symbol of our longing for peace. Let us hope that our community may be a source of freedom from violence and exclusion. May we become the ones we've been waiting for. And together, let us strive to create lasting peace.